Hey everyone, how's it going? Welcome to the channel, and I am here for a ranking video for you guys. Now for this ranking, I'll be ranking the Rush discography. Now I realize that I've technically already ranked the entire Rush discography before on my channel. I know that's how actually some of you have found my channel, but my ranking has changed since then, and I've grown to like some of these albums more and some of them less. Some of them have grown on me, some of them have grown off of me. And if you disagree with this ranking, that's okay. Just feel free to let me know your ranking in the comments, of course. But this is just my opinion, and again, my ranking has changed a little bit since the last time I've done a ranking for the band Rush. Now, Rush is a great band, easily one of my favorite bands of all time. I mean, if you haven't checked these guys out, you gotta check them out, you know. Like the saying goes, you're either a Rush fan or you're missing out. And that's the truth. I mean, but yeah, we're gonna go from worst to best. Let's go ahead and begin with what I have at the bottom. So at the bottom, Test for Echo. The thing is with this album, I think it's pretty good, but it's just very forgettable. It's a very forgettable album. I really honestly don't remember much from this album, but I do remember liking some stuff from this album. Like I like the title track, Time in Motion, and Resist. I think that, you know, these are pretty good songs along with Half the World. I mean, this album does have some good stuff on it. Now, here's the thing. Rush has never released a bad album. I think all their work is either good or it's just really great. I mean, you don't got a bad album from Rush. But this album, I would not say is great. It's just good. That's all. But yeah, it's a good album, but it's just far from one of their best. All right, so next up, Roll the Bones. Some people might disagree with me having this album this low in my ranking, but I don't know. This album has just kind of grown off of me over time. Now, there's definitely some good songs on this album. I mean, like Dreamline and Bravado. I think these songs are really good. But then you got songs like the title track, which is not one of my favorites. I mean, is it a bad song? No, but I just can't really get behind that rapping part that's in this song. I mean, the first half of this album is definitely stronger than the second half either way, but yeah. Roll the Bones, it's a good album, but again, just not one of their best. And I think the 90s is where Rush was really at their weakest. I know maybe some people might not agree, but that's just what I think. So next up, we got Vapor Trails. I have the original copy, the original album, and I also have the reissue, the remix version of Vapor Trails. I mean, the remix version is definitely better than, you know, the original version. Definitely worth owning if you're a fan of Rush. Now, there was once a time where I had this album at the bottom of my ranking, believe it or not. But it's actually kind of grown on me a little bit. I mean, there is some good stuff on this album. You got One Little Victory, Ghost Rider, Peaceable Kingdom, and How It Is, which is, I think, a very underrated Rush song. I don't know how that song isn't, you know, getting a lot more attention from fans, but I really dig that song. But yeah, I think Vapor Trails actually has a lot of solid stuff on the album. Sure, it's not one of their best, but I do think it's a very good album for what it is. So yeah. Okay, so next up, we got Snakes and Arrows. Yeah, this is a good album. Again, it's just not one of their best. Like Test for Echo, this album just has songs that just aren't that memorable. Again, the first half is definitely stronger than the second half. I mean, you got Far Cry, which is, I think, one of the best songs of their more modern material. You also got Armor and Sword, Working Them Angels. I mean, there's some good stuff on this album. So, Snakes and Arrows, it's a good album, but just, again, not one of their strongest. Next up, we got Presto. Now, for the longest time, this album would have actually been a lot lower. There was a time where I had this album lower than Snakes and Arrows, Roll the Bones, and all those albums that I just mentioned. This used to be my second least favorite, but not so much anymore. I mean, I think this album has grown on me a little bit. This is, of course, a late 80s album, and I think it's pretty good. I mean, you know, you can't go wrong with the album cover, too. I mean, it's got bunnies on it. Come on. But yeah, definitely a great album. Or actually, I think it's just a good album, but it's just not one of their best. I do like Show Don't Tell, Chain Lightning, The Past, which is definitely top 3 best songs on the album. I think the title track's pretty good too, but yeah, Presto, it's a good album, but just again, not one of their best. Next up, we got Counterparts. Pretty underrated album, if you ask me. I mean, definitely really great stuff. I think that this is the best of their 90s stuff. I mean, you got Stick It Out. That's a great song. Very good choice as a single. Cut to the Chase. Nobody's Hero, Cold Fire. I mean, there's some good stuff on this album. So yeah, underrated album, definitely very good. Next up, Hold Your Fire. In my opinion, this album is actually kind of overhated. I mean, there's a lot of people that say that this is Rush's weakest album, which I don't agree with at all, actually. I think this is actually a pretty solid album. Pretty underrated, too. I mean, there's not really much to complain about with this album. Now, maybe the reason that some people say that this is one of Rush's weakest is because it's more, I want to say more commercial, more, I guess, radio-friendly, very mainstream. I don't know. And I've heard some people say that this album is forgettable, which I don't agree with that at all. This album has a lot of memorable tracks and a lot of great tracks. I mean, you got Force 10. I mean, it's got Time Stands Still on it, which is, you know, a popular song for them. You got Open Secrets, Prime Mover, Lock and Key, Mission. I mean, this album has a lot of great stuff on it. So yeah, underrated album, Hold Your Fire. Next up, we got the last studio album from Rush, Clockwork Angels. This album's really good. Definitely the best of their modern material. I mean, this was definitely a great swan song for Rush, if you ask me. Like the best final bow that they could come out with. I feel like they did a good job. I mean, definitely a great album. Again, I'd say it's easily the best of their modern stuff. I mean, there's a lot of great songs on here, like the title track, Halo Effect, The Wreckers, and The Garden, and some others. But yeah, great album. And yeah, not much else to say about it. I mean, I think most people can agree that this is the best of Rush's more modern material. I've seen some people say it's like in the top 5 best Rush albums, which that's taking it a little too far, I think. But yeah, it's still a great album. Okay, so next up, debut album, Rush. Definitely a great album and a really good debut album. I mean, you got Finding My Way, Here Again, What You're Doing, In the Mood, Working Man. I mean, these are great tracks, man. If you're into classic rock like Led Zeppelin or anything like that, this album is definitely going to be up your alley. I mean, this is before, you know, they really took a lot of that progressive influence into their sound. This was before they had Neil Peart on drums, too. And, I mean, for what it is, it's a great album, but it's not one of their best still. I mean, obviously it's not. It's nowhere near the top 5, of course, but it's still a very good album and definitely worth checking out. So, the debut album. Okay, so next up, Grace Under Pressure. There's a lot to like about this album. I mean, I know that some people really like this album, some people don't really like it, but I like it. I think it's a great album. I mean, you got After Image on here, which is, I think, one of the best songs of their 80s time. I just really love that song. But you got other great songs, too, like Distant Early Warning, and The Enemy Within, which are also really good. But yeah, Grace Under Pressure. If you're into progressive rock that relies heavily on synthesizers and stuff, this album is definitely going to be up your alley. Definitely worth checking out. Grace Under Pressure. Now, the next album in my ranking might stir a few people up. I've actually seen some people say that this is one of their weakest, which I'm just astounded by. But next up, we got Power Windows. Very, very underrated Rush album, in my opinion. I mean, in my opinion, there's not a weak song on this album, so I don't know where people are coming from when they say that this is one of their weakest. Sure, it's not one of their best, but it's still a very great album. I mean, they definitely relied on the synthesizers a lot more heavily on this album than they did on the albums that came before. So maybe that's why some people don't like it. Maybe it relies too much on synths and stuff. But I do like the album. It's very good. One of their more atmospheric albums, I think. A lot of great songs on here, like The Big Money, Manhattan Project, Marathon, Territories, and Mystic Rhythms, which are great tracks for sure. But yeah, Power Windows, it's a great album and very underrated. Okay, so next up we got Caress of Steel. I've seen a lot of people say that this is their weakest in the 70s era. I would agree it's not one of the best of their 70s work, but it's just above the debut album for me personally. I do like the album though. I think it's really good. I mean, you got Lakeside Park and The Necromancer. These are great tracks. You got some of their epics on here, which are really good. But yeah, Caress of Steel, if you're into, you know, longer songs, longer progressive rock songs, definitely check out this album. So Caress of Steel. Next up, we got Fly By Night. I mean, this album is a classic. You can't go wrong with it. It's one of their early works. This is the first album with Neil Peart. I mean, you got songs like Anthem, and the title track, Rivendell, and some others. But yeah, great album, Fly By Night. Again, if you're into classic rock, do yourself a favor, check out this album, Fly By Night. Okay, so next up, this one might not make some people happy since I have this one above some of the albums that I've talked about previously, but next up, Signals. What a great album this is. Easily one of the best of their 80s time. This is when they really started to use synthesizers more, and it really works for them, I think. Now, yeah, it's not their best album, but it's still a great album. I mean, you got Subdivisions, The Analog Kid, Chemistry, Losing It. Great stuff. I mean, really great songs. But yeah, Signals, great album. Next up, we got Permanent Waves. Man, what a solid album this is. I've seen some people say that this is their favorite Rush album, and to be honest with you guys, there really is no wrong answer when it comes to Rush. I've seen so many people say that like this album is their favorite or that album is their favorite. I mean, sure, you know, you won't see people say that their modern material or even their 90s material is their best, but, you know, they surely came out with a lot of albums, of course, so yeah, there's really no wrong answer here. I mean, usually when people, you know, pick out their favorite Rush albums, you know, it's almost all the time going to be something from the 70s or the early 80s time. So yeah, but Permanent Waves is a great album. You got The Spirit of Radio, which is excellent. Free Will, Jacob's Ladder, Natural Science. I mean, a lot of great songs on this album. So yeah, definitely a classic. Permanent Waves. Okay, so next up, we got Hemispheres. Now, like Caress of Steel, if you're into epics or, you know, really long progressive rock songs, you're going to want to check out this album, especially Cygnus X Book 2. I mean, this song, it's one of their best epics, I think. Definitely a great song. I mean, you also got Circumstances and The Trees, and that just fantastic instrumental on here. I mean, everything about this album I think is great. So Hemispheres, great album. definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of progressive rock. If you're into bands like Yes, definitely check out this album, and check out the band Rush in general. But yeah, Hemispheres, definitely a great album and a classic. All right, so next up we got A Farewell to Kings. Man, what a great album this is. I mean, it really is great. I mean, it's easily one of the best of their 70s work. I mean, you got just really great tracks on here, like the title track, Xanadu, Closer to the Heart, which I think is a little overrated, but it's okay. I do like it. There's not really a bad song on this album, to be honest. I think this album is excellent. So, Farewell to Kings, great album. So, now we got 2 more to go. So at number 2, I've seen some people place this at number 1, and you know what? For good reason. I mean, number 2 and number 1 could easily, interchange, I guess. They could switch around in my ranking, but at number 2, 2112, I have the original remastered pressing, and I also have the anniversary digipack that comes with 3 discs. Definitely worth owning if you're a fan of Rush. But yeah, 2112, man, it's a great album and definitely a classic and easily one of their best. I mean, you got the title track, which is one of their best epics. I'd say it's their best epic or long song. I mean, and I think it's one of their best songs, period. I mean, it's really great. You also got The Twilight Zone, Lessons, and Tears, which are just really great tracks. But yeah, 2112, there's not a single weak moment on this album. Again, if you're into any kind of progressive music or progressive rock, check out this album, 2112. Definitely a really great album, basically a masterpiece. But at number 1, now even though 2112 might be a masterpiece, for me, I still have to place this album at number 1, given the impact and just given the greatness of this album. But at number 1, I gotta go with Moving Pictures. I know most people would have this at number 1 for obvious reasons. It's an excellent album. There's not a single weak moment on this album. I mean, you got classics like Tom Sawyer, Red Barchetta, YYZ, Limelight, The Camera Eye, Witch Hunt, and Vital Signs. Every song on here is excellent. Now, when it comes to songs like Tom Sawyer, I personally don't care if I ever have to hear this song ever again, since it's really overplayed and it's, of course, one of their biggest songs. But it's still a great song, though. I don't care if I ever have to hear it ever again. I can just very easily skip that track. But this album is a masterpiece. So Moving Pictures, that's what I have at number 1. Excellent album. Well, there you have it, guys. That is my ranking for Rush, the updated version. Let me know what you guys think. How would you rank the Rush discography? And, I think ranking videos like this are really good for people that are looking to check out a band so that, they can get an idea on which albums maybe they should start out with and whatnot. But that's my ranking for Rush. Let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. Have a nice day and take care.